Good morning, friends. Today is a beautiful Monday morning in India. So, good morning from India to all of you who are watching my live stream. And as you know, today we have a very deep topic to discuss, and that is what is about is the economy. What is going wrong with the global economy, and what are the parameters? And as you know, we keep hearing in the news that a lot of bad things are happening right now, but we are restricting ourselves to the business subject and we will focus on the business. And when we talk about global economy, we cannot say that we are independent of each other. We cannot say that. We no longer have the liberty or luxury to say that, look, I exist in my country, and in another part of the world something is going wrong and therefore I'm not affected, I'm immune to these changes globally. This is absolutely wrong. It is not a right statement to make, because we are part of the globe. We live in a global sort of village where we are interdependent. There is a supply chain. So what is going wrong? It's a key subject, and as you can see, I'm live with you. You can actually send in your comments, and if you agree, disagree, or whatever you feel like about the global economy, and I will address those comments or questions as soon as it arrives in my inbox, which is behind me in the screen. All right, so let's talk about the global economy. And as I said, the global economy or the global business is entirely dependent on each other. As a country, even though you are a large country or a small country, you cannot say that I'm not affected by these changes which are happening globally. And right now, we are seeing less and less money. We are seeing people earning potential reducing, and we are also seeing the wars brewing. We have just come out of pandemic, but God knows when the next pandemic will happen. So we are not future ready. Do you think we are future ready? Do let me know. If you think we are future ready as humanity, we have to basically know that we are not looking at certain parameters which are not right in the global economic arena. So there are many challenges when we talk about global economy. We are the world. When we say we basically means all the people, all the living beings on this planet are facing a lot of challenges, and these challenges are basically created by humans. But humans are the prime species on planet Earth, so all other living beings will also have to pay the price of whatever going on. And ultimately, everything is driven by the business. So when we talk about business, it actually tells us that there is growth, there is prosperity, there is happiness, and all that is boiled down to how much money each country is making, and then it boils down to how much money each individual living in that country is making. So the happiness quotient is directly linked to the business that person is doing. So therefore, the business are facing huge challenges, whether you are a small company or a large company or even a mom and pop shop. The challenges are very real, and these challenges are happening because of the various reasons. We will discuss all of those reasons today. Number one reason is the inflation. The inflation is on the rise. And what is the inflation? Because we keep hearing this inflation quite often in the news, that inflation is going high, and then the government does something. They come out with something. They come out with some parameters, and they say, okay, we have maintained the inflation at certain level. And each country government is doing that. It's not that, I don't want to name anybody, but there are some economic norms which people use to bring down the inflation. But first of all, what is inflation? Do people understand what is inflation? Inflation, basically, if I have to explain in layman terms, is the decrease in the purchasing power. That is what it boiled down to. Basically, inflation has a very, very complex very complex definition. But then what it result is in reduction in how much you can spend money to make yourself happy, because each person has a need. You need to buy food, you need to buy entertainment, you need to buy recreation, you also need to buy furniture, for example. For that, you can sit comfortably in your house. You may have to invest in order to grow further. So all of this is affected by inflation, because inflation will then make sure that you don't have money to do any of these things. And that is where the problem starts creeping in. What are the other parameters and which are going wrong? The other parameter which are related to business and economy is a higher interest rate. Higher interest rate create a lot of impact, because that interest, if it is high, then people will not be able to invest. We will cover the effect, cause and effect of higher interest rate uh, in detail after I finish the summary. So the higher interest rates are also happening across the world. Interest rates are going high, and because of the higher interest rate, people are finding it difficult to take loans, a cost effective loan, to fulfill their needs, or investment, fulfill their business needs in an investment. So personal loans as well as business loans, both these loans are actually showing higher interest rate. What is the next activity which is going wrong? What is the next parameter which is going wrong? And that is the economic slowdown. So economic slowdown, what does it mean? Economic slowdown is uh, the the production itself is slows down. So all of these things are interrelated, because inflation will make things much more difficult. Because inflation is there, the interest rate will start increasing, and because interest rates are increasing, people will have less and less money to do anything, whether it is your personal needs or it is related to your business needs. And if there are less investment in business, then obviously the economic slowdown will happen, because less and less production is going to happen, less and less consumption of goods is going to happen, and because of that, when there is less money in the system, then obviously it's a slowdown. So these are the three parameters which are happening all over the world, all across. Whether you are a large economy or a small economy, it is going to affect you in a big time. In fact, it is affecting. And the world has come out of these various slowdown in the past, because there used to be one or two parameters which used to affect at any time. So the economic slowdown or inflation and all of these things will happen, may affect the global countries for a short period of time, because the other parameters were stronger. Therefore there was resilience, and the world could have come out. This time all of these bad things are happening all together. So it is a tough time that we are looking ahead ourselves, and therefore I'm having this live conversation with you. So let's go back to our detailed discussion about understanding what is inflation. So what causes the inflation, and what is inflation? So first of all, the first way to define inflation is uh, the demand pull inflation. So what is demand pull inflation? Demand is, if there is too much money in the system, if there is too much money in the system and the commodities which are available are too little. So one side there's a lot of money, and other side is that the available goods are less. That means too much money is chasing too little goods. That is called the pull inflation. So this is exactly what is happening. What is important for the world today are few things like food, medicines, and also arms and ammunition. So a lot of money is being spent on food, uh, healthcare supplies, medication, as well as, because of the war, a lot of ammunition is being purchased, arms and armaments are being purchased. So a lot of money in going into these three buckets, and therefore for other things the money is not available, because too much money going into too little commodities. What are the other factor for increase in inflation? Very rapid growth. If there are certain countries showing very extremely high speed of growth, then that can create inflation. The byproduct of very rapid growth is the inflation. Now you may think, look, growth is always good, but then very rapid growth is it creates a bubble. We have seen time and again, this bubble burst. It happened in 1999, 2000 year. It also happened in 2008. And the 2008 slowdown, the global slowdown, is very very is it's like an eye opener, because the very small thing created the slowdown in 2008, and that was the lower end housing funding. And that created such a big impact on the world that it took almost 10 years for the world to come out of that recession of 2008. So essentially, the inflation is the key factor which can make or break things. And if there is too much growth also, it creates uh, pull based inflation. What is the other kind of inflation? So the other kind of inflation is the cost push inflation. And the cost is basically cost of production increases. So when the cost of production increases, that means the raw material is now available at a higher price. So because of the raw material being available at the higher price, whatever may be the reason could be thousand reasons. There could be the cost itself is going up. There could be reason which is related to supply chain. That supply chain is disrupted because of the cost of the raw material is now going up. When the cost of the raw material goes up, the cost of the produced merchandise will also go up. So because something is going wrong in some part of the world, it will impact the entire world. Let's understand this in more detail. Let's look at the supply chain disruption. Because there was pandemic, the supply chain was disrupted, and because of that, the things started becoming more expensive globally. So this is the second kind of inflation. And the third kind of inflation is the built-in inflation, which is related to when workers start to demand higher wages. Because of other two inflation, that means the cost of living is going up, and in order to keep up to the living standards, the wages have to be matched. And so this is the final nail in the coffin. See, all of these things are happening today in our global economy. What is happening is the demand pull inflation is going up. That means there is too much money for too little things. That means too much money countries are spending in too little items, which is, if the world is going on war, that means the ammunition and armaments will not come for free. They are not just lying there on the shelf for you to pick up and use it. Each of these armaments are very expensive, so a lot of money going into arms and ammunition. So demand pull inflation. Second is the cost inflation, which is the cost of raw materials going up because there is a supply chain disruption, especially after 2020. So those two inflation created the third inflation, which is the built-in inflation, which is now the cost of living is higher, and therefore the wages have to be matched with this increase inflation. So I've explained all of this. And what are the what are the effects of inflation? One is the reduction in purchasing power. That means you have less and less money to buy anything. So once you are having less money to buy things, you automatically get into a savings mode where even for small things you will start thinking more than three times. So when you're thinking 3 to 4 times or delaying the purchase problem, whatever issue you have, you can solve it by purchasing that item, but you delay that decision because you have delayed it. And therefore the money is now lying with you in your pocket. It is not part of the economy, and therefore reduction in purchasing power. So if there is no money flow, the growth will definitely get hindered. And then uncertainty and instability. So when the world will come out of this inflation, it is uncertain, and that uncertainty will create instability. And we are seeing this all across the world today, that there is a lot of instability. There are issues which are affecting everyone today, and nobody seems to have any solution. They are just pushing it forward so that future generation can solve it, or somebody else will come and solve this issue. So whatever happening today, people are not thinking about the future. They are just pushing it forward, and because of that, instability continues. So inflation creates instability. It also creates uncertainty. I have already told you, it reduce the purchasing power. It also creates income inequality. uh, when too much money is chasing too little commodities, then obviously the people who control those commodities will become richer and richer and richer, um, and rest of the population will become poorer. So it creates an income inequality. So that is exactly what is happening in the world today. When the arms companies are getting richer and richer, the people who control arms and ammunition are getting much more, economical, in net worth. Their net worth is increasing, whereas the rest of the world is a lot of issues being faced by the rest of the world. They are facing issues related to fulfilling the basic needs, education for their children, and also healthcare. Everything is getting more and more expensive. So this is exactly what has happened. Classic case of what can happen to the world and which is happening right now. Now let's look at the other aspect, and that is why the inflation is so high right now. So inflation is high because all of these things are affecting the world today. It started with pandemic, where the pandemic created disrupted the supply chain, and because of the supply chain being disrupted, there were issues related to availability of goods. And the when the goods are not available readily, then obviously the costs went up, and production went down because people were working from home. So obviously people were not available to work from factories or offices, so production definitely went down. And at the same time, the supply chain was disrupted, so it triggered from that. But then subsequently there was Ukraine war, which created a big dent, because Ukraine and Russia are the major producers of the wheat, and that wheat goes to most of the African countries, because the African nations are, they are the wheat consumer, but they don't have wheat locally available. So because of the war in Russia and Ukraine, there is a part of the world which which had undergone major disruption in supply chain, especially when it comes to food items. And that snowballed into a major crisis globally, because you can't live in isolation. For example, I'm from India. So in India there was no wheat related issue, because India is a second largest producer of wheat. But this is a commodity. Think wheat like a commodity. It disrupted the supply chain, especially because of Ukraine Russia war. And now we are getting into a much bigger turmoil with Israel, Middle East, getting into a boiling point where anything can happen. So uncertainty, and instability, all of these things are happening as we speak. So this is exactly what is happening. Very, very classic case of what is going wrong with the world economy. Now let's move on to the interest rate. What is going on in the interest rate. So interest rate is actually two pronged. I will explain what it is, and then we can have a discussion on that. So interest rates are obviously higher, and what is the end effect when it comes to increase in interest rate? One is the reduction of consumer spending, because if the interest rates are higher, obviously you will not go out and for small things like buying mobile phones or your electronic items, or even your health care or any small needs, you will not go out and take advance from the loan agency or from a bank, because you are thinking about how do you want to repay that, because the interest rates are so high. So reduction in consumer spending will definitely happen. And then other thing is the reduction in business investment, because if the interest rates are higher, you will then defer the decision of investing for business, uh, for your expansion, because you are now thinking that if you invest this money, how you are going to recover that, because the interest rates are higher. uh, the cost of produced items are much lower, and obviously you have to repay the loan agency or a bank. How you are going to make that payment is running in people's mind, and therefore they will actually defer the future expansion of their business by not taking the loan. So these two activities will happen, which will result in increased inflation, as I explained in the previous section. However, this is increase in interest rate is not entirely a bad thing. When things are going right, then the countries basically increase the interest rate to control certain items. One is, when you increase the interest rate, it actually strengthen your currency. So your currency will become stronger if you are offering a higher interest rate. Why the currency will get stronger? Because obviously the cross currency fluctuations, your currency is much more expensive, because if somebody wants to invest in your country, then obviously they will have to, since your currency is stronger, since your loans are higher, your currency is stronger, therefore the money will start flowing in, and it becomes your country becomes an attractive destination for foreign investments. In a normal situation, increase in um interest rate will also result in reduction on inflation. So let me take you back to the first point that I made, is that if there is too much rapid growth, is if there is too much rapid growth, that actually creates an inflation. The byproduct of very rapid growth, huge investment, creates a sort of a inflationary bubble which can burst. So by increasing the interest rate, you can slow down that growth, and because of that you can control the inflation. Now this good aspect of increase in interest rate happens in a normal circumstances, but right now this effect is not going to have impact, or very little impact. And the third good thing that can happen because of the increase in interest rate is the foreign investment. So that we are already seeing that, especially in a country like India, the FDI, foreign direct investment, is booming. So there are a lot of investment coming from foreign direct investors, because all of these things are true for India. The higher interest rate, because of that, the currency is stronger. Because of that, the FDI is coming into India, and therefore it looks like the economy is stable from the economic standpoint. How long that will remain like that will be determined by the Israel war. So a lot of bad things can happen because of the Israel war. Now let's look at the slowdown, the effect of what is going on, because the name of our program or the live stream is what is going wrong with global economy. Obviously, the slowdown is happening right now. So, uh, so why the slowdown is affecting the world in a bad way? So let's look at this. There is a the slowdown happens because of the financial crisis. So when we talk about the slowdown happens because the inflation is high, the interest rates are high. Because of that, it will result into a global meltdown. That means less and less money is available in the system for growth activities. And since the growth is not happening, obviously the downside of that will be the slowdown. The economy will slow down, and the reason for slowdown could be financial crisis, which is happening right now. Some countries are feeling the heat more than other countries, because if the countries do not have any internal production ability, or internal ability to produce food items, which is the major cost item today, then the financial crisis will definitely brew, and there could be run on the bank. There could be run on the bank, where the banks will have to, when they are offering more in higher interest rate, the people will start withdrawing money, or they start withdrawing their fixed deposits into savings, so that they want to make sure that they have money available for a rainy day. So this will actually start creating a financial crisis. Second activity for slowdown is the pandemic. So pandemic happened. Pandemic is a disease which affects the world globally. And when the people are affected by such pandemics, then the disruption in supply chain is bound to happen, because the supply chain is largely dependent on people, because there are people deployed in factories, in offices, who are contributing for their work by working for the economy. Now these people are available less and less, and therefore the pandemic will actually create a situation where the supply chain is disrupted in a big, big way. And once the supply chain start to deteriorate, then obviously the entire economy will get affected, and the economic slowdown will also happen. The third most important activity for slowdown is war and geopolitical tensions. So when people are mentally, not looking at production, they are looking at settling their scores with each other, or they are fighting for certain causes which they feel is much more important than the business activity or earning. Obviously their mind and their efforts are going into the war or geopolitical tension. They will not be working to increase the production, they will not be working to improve the supply chain, so they will actually get distracted there. And therefore war and geopolitical tensions are one of the key items which is affecting the world today. So all of these things that I'm talking today are actually happening all together at the same time. Earlier, during the other slowdowns, one or two things used to happen which which could bring the world back on track in a matter of few months. But this time, a lot of bad things are happening, and I'm actually informing you all of them one by one. The fourth item for economic slowdown is obviously natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, and things like that, which actually disrupt everything, because of the natural disasters, people die in mass, and when everything get destroyed, economy definitely will get slowed down. One important aspect I like to make here is that there is a climate change issue which is also affecting the world right now. And climate change is not less important than the disaster, because this is a constant disaster which is affecting us. There is more rain, there are unpredictable activity that are happening, and all of that is happening because of climate change. So definitely this climate change is affecting the world, is creating inflation, is creating is disrupting supply chain, and so on and so forth. So because of that, um, these things are happening, and the economic slowdown is also adding right now. So all these three important items are affecting the world as we speak, and because of that, we are seeing so many bad things happening for earning potential, for business, for growth, for education, everything. Everything is getting affected because of this. Now let's move on to the challenges. So why there is a slowdown, and why there are so many challenges. Well, challenges are definitely quite huge, and there is Ukraine war, there is pandemic which just come out. People are now talking about the next pandemic which may affect the world very soon. So if there is more to come, more health crisis to come, then obviously we will get affected by that. So all of these things are happening. Especially there are geopolitical tension between US, China, India, China, India, Pakistan, Turkey, neighboring countries, France, and so on. So if you look at the world today, everybody is having so many issues with each other. So there is a lot of geopolitical tension. Armenia, Azerbaijan, even small countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan is affecting the world. And so there is huge amount of geopolitical tension, and therefore some of these tensions have resulted into wars. So Ukraine war is a major example, and now we are getting into another major, much bigger war because of the tension in the Middle East, especially the Israel Hamas tension which is going on, Hezbollah, and all of these guys, Iran. And now there are two units of US Navy supporting Israel. Now, when we say two units, you just can't say them as one or two. Each unit consists of aircraft carriers and multiple warships. It's like an army by itself, and United States has 20 of them. So at any point in time, they have 14 operational. So right now they have moved two units to control Iran, and each of these units will have at least 90 aircrafts based at the aircraft carrier, on board the aircraft carrier. So this is a huge geopolitical tension. Because of that, people in other countries are now watching what is going to happen to us, and that has created a negative spiral into the entire world, and that is creating a geopolitical tension. So when we say geopolitical tension happening in Middle East, but the entire world is affected because of that. Obviously, something goes wrong in Middle East, the oil and gas supply chain will definitely get disrupted. So wheat is there, and second is the oil and gas is at threat. And if the oil and gas supply chain gets affected, then the entire world will be under a major crisis. And interest rates are also going high, but interest rates will go high because of all these issues, as I explained to you. Now, let's look at what the political policymakers or individuals who are deciding the fate of the world today, what they can do to solve these crises. Because we have identified what is going wrong in the world today. Now, let's look at what can be done to resolve these crises. So, number one activity the policymakers must do is improve the public health system. So, first thing is that because of the pandemic, we have realized that there were a lot of gaps in the public health systems. Even though you are a very advanced, very rich country, but then the pandemic opened the Pandora's box. Everyone realized that there are gaps everywhere. So even though countries like Italy, who used to boast that they have the best healthcare system in the world, they suffered one of the highest casualties, and obviously that threw a big question to everyone that what we can do now to improve our public health system. So if the public health system is adequate, then more and more people will be available to contribute to the economy. So the policymaker must focus on that. I mean, I'm talking about the challenges that our leaders must be facing, considering all these issues which are affecting the world today. The first parameter that they have to improve is the public health system. Then number two is end all wars. Because if you have wars going on in one part of the world, or and escalations, the war have the ability to escalate and become a world war. We have to end it, because if we start getting involved in wars, then obviously more and more people get engaged in the war, and less people will be available for production and business growth, etc. It is not a good thing to happen. So end all war. Whatever you do as a policymaker, as leadership role, you have to look at how you can end all wars. And number three is combat inflation. So I've already explained what is inflation, what is happening right now in the world. We have to look at parameters which increase the inflation. So once the inflation is reduced, then the business growth will actually come back on track. The supply chain will get reestablished, and then world will move forward. Then number four is investment in growth like infrastructure, education, and research. These three major items, three areas requires major investment in order to growth to happen. Because if there's no research happening, there is no fresh investment expected for some new technology which can improve the life of the people, life of the living beings on this planet. So research has to happen, education must happen, because our children must learn the new tricks, new methods, and the infrastructure has to be built. Because if the infrastructure is not being built, because infrastructure is a big investment for any country. So if there is infrastructure improvement happening, that means there is a huge amount of capital flowing in the system. because infrastructure is not just infrastructure. It requires roads, sanitation, electricity, whole lot of other things is required to improve the infrastructure. So this is also happening. And the fifth item is promote cross border trade. Right now what is happening is there is a lot of geopolitical tension. This geopolitical tension is creating adverse environment for cross border trade. For example, if you are in India and Pakistan, obviously you don't want to do trading with each other, because obviously there is so much tension. You don't want to come into a limelight. But if the tension reduces, if the we are just close by, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, these are close countries, to do trade in these areas will be much more easier. So if you promote this cross-border trade, then we can resolve locally, in a local segment, a lot of issues. And that is one of the agenda for policymakers and the leadership to resolve these issues. And lastly, the number six item is the climate change, because a lot of natural disasters are part of the climate change. We have to realize that these climate change is real, and that is triggering these natural disaster. Sometimes there is cloud burst, as we call it, or torrential rain, which happens quickly in a small area, which affects the entire area and subsequently down the stream. So these natural disasters are part of the climate change. So address the climate change immediately. So these are the six parameters that our leadership or policymakers have to look at. And all of these parameters are not easy, requires a lot of deliberation, discussion, negotiations. And I'm sure the policymakers or the leadership are working on these things. And but till the time the solution is found, the business is definitely going to get affected. There's going to be a huge inflation globally. There's going to be increased in interest rate, and there is going to be a tension because of this war, and that will result in disruption in supply chain, which will affect everything else, and this whole thing will snowball. So these are the things which I wanted to share with you today in my live stream. And if you, I see two members who are watching us, Poonam Verma and Gauri, who are saying good morning. So good morning to you. If you have any question on this subject, feel free to send in your comments. My name is Chandrakant, and you are watching Akulmach Business. I will catch you very soon in the next one. Bye for now.